Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. Here, this is the spot where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Welcome home, Brains. There's only one requirement to hang out on the edge, is that you open your big brain and close your small mind. Did you bring your thinking caps? It's time to put them on, because the conversation starts now. Because, girl, we done had a dynamite interview and I did not hit record and it would be ugly. Before we get started, gotta do a little housekeeping. I need to make sure that I have your authorization and consent to edit, record, and distribute this podcast on behalf of my company, ALM Enterprises, for the podcast On the Edge with April Mahoney. Do I have your permission, Erin Baker?
You absolutely have my permission.
Thank you. Let's just gather a little space and kind of close our eyes and take a few deep breaths to make sure that we are in alignment, that we share the same space, time, and energy, a good vibe, that this is going to land upon ears that need to hear it, hearts that need to feel it, and hands that need to hold it. That's my virtual hug. Did you get all that?
I did.
All right. All right. Somewhere during the course of the interview, refer to the listeners as brains. They like that. It'll be up in about 72 hours after I record it. I go in and do a little cleanup and editing. And then I split it in half, make a YouTube video, and then I make a podcast audio. I upload the audio, and then it's going to go over all the RSS feeds, Apple, Podbean, Spotify, all that good stuff. Okay.
Awesome.
Let me make sure here that okay. Here we go. Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. How you doing today? I hope you're doing good. I'm counting on it. Today we have a very special guest. We have Erin Baker. And you know what her zone of genius is? It's helping people that have learning disabilities and challenges. She's got one incredible story to share with us about how she's overcome and adapted. There's a lot of people out there with learning and disabilities. When I say people, I mean adults. And they don't realize it until after their children have been diagnosed. They go into the work environment. They're not able to maintain a job, or they're overachievers, or they're the people pleaser, or they have low self-esteem. And they're just wondering, what is this all about? When there is an underlying root cause. So we're going to get our tools out. We're going to dig it all up with Erin Baker. How are you, Queen?
I am doing really well. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction.
No, it probably did not do you justice for all the things that you do in the world. Tell my brains a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
Yeah. So first of all, what I wanted to do is just kind of throw this out there that, like, even though we're specifically talking about people with disabilities and things like that, it's not going to be what you expect about people with disabilities. It's going to be just like what April was talking about, was that people who didn't even know there was stuff going on.
So, Erin, you had an exciting opportunity to be a part of a collective, an anthology. Tell me a little bit about that project.
Yeah, so there's this amazing book coming out under Biz Her Way, so BIZ Her Way. Um, Amazing woman putting this together, Sasha. And she's collected several entrepreneurs, and we're each doing a chapter about who we are, what we do, like how we got to where it is. And my chapter is called, for example, Success Starts Where Survival Ends. And this amazing Amazon book is going to be for sale. It should be starting in August. And then we also have a summit, again, Biz Her Way, that we'll be presenting in November. And so you can actually see me live present some of the stuff that is in the book in there.
Oh, well, that's exciting. Brains, it's going to be a page turner. So, Erin, you made a very bold statement. You told me that the best thing that could have ever happened to you was having a nervous breakdown and then being fired shortly after from a job that you had worked at for 14 years. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you got to go to the bottom before you can get to the top. Tell us about that.
So true. Yeah. I was running my life like many of us out there do. Many of us who identify as high performers, whether we're women, whether we're men, whether we're moms, whether we're full-time, whatever it is, right? Those of us who were like, nope, just keep pushing. And that's how I was doing. And um, single mom to a teenager,
Oh,
been a single mom his whole life. And he has ADHD, autism, and several other things in there. And then I myself have anxiety and have dealt with anxiety my whole life. And then one day at work, I had the worst panic attack I have ever had in my life. And I was drop dead afraid. I could not move. I was paralyzed. And for
oh.
me, a person that always figures out how to move forward,
Mhm,
that
mhm.
there aren't words. There aren't
It's
words.
debilitating.
Yeah, and especially if people around you don't understand what, they have only ever, whether it's your employees, whether it's your family or anything else like that, they have only ever known you. And that's what they knew me as, is like, person that gets up and just keeps going on. What do you mean you're paralyzed? What does that mean? And it was so bad, and I do not say nervous breakdown lightly. It was so bad. I ended up in intensive inpatient, followed by intensive outpatient therapy. And let me tell you what, that's where the hard work began.
Exactly. So because of this episode, is that why your employer terminated you because they said, "Oh," or did they just want to go? They wanted to have a reason, so they went back and tried to tick a bunch of boxes.
So it was actually a combination of things. So through my therapy and everything else like that, I realized that I actually had some really toxic core beliefs that had gotten into my head from, as a child. Not that people intentionally put there or anything else like that, but that my value, my worth was only as good as the output, that I could bring, that
Mhm.
I could, the objectives that I could bring to other people. And so, manage that, and the work worked with me on that, FMLA and all of that good stuff. And then what it was is that taught me how to have boundaries, which I had never had boundaries before.
Wow.
Um, and coming back and talking about, hey, how do we move more healthily forward in this position? And one of the things that I found out was that I had ADHD and autism.
Wow.
And ironically, I was this institution's expert on, so teaching them about their processes and about other individuals and stuff like that interact with them about neurodiversity, like autism and ADHD. And what ended up happening is, because I started setting boundaries and because I started having conversations about, like, well, just so you know, for me, that kind of communication doesn't work well. I need this kind of communication.
Mhm, mhm.
And it was actually because of that. And so it was an overt over time of trying to work things out and stuff like that. And so ultimately it was actually because I got diagnosed with autism and ADHD that I got fired.
When they should have made concessions like they do with anybody else that has a handicap,
Yeah.
for
And
the lack of a better term.
yeah. And it's a crazy thing because it is not an easy thing to play with, because first of all, I had no idea I had autism and ADHD. And then when I did start to have the idea, again after my son had been diagnosed, because that's the
Mhm.
number one way that people
Right,
actually
right,
realize, late diagnoses and stuff like that, is because, oh, my kid is. And then you start to see the similarities in yourself. And it was when we started to take a look at how does that translate into the working world, or, the world as we know it for adults. That's when they really, like, they couldn't understand the translation.
right.
And yeah, so then they start to,
They're figuring there, and they're basing it off of what studies, statistics, and elementary school teachers are saying. This child cannot focus. They're disruptive. They are, they're introverted. All of
yeah,
this stuff. And in actuality, I believe, and I'm gonna tell you, I believe in that all these people that are neurodivergent, it's a different species. And the reason why I say that is because it's a learning difference. There's an environmental adaptivity. Some are sensitive to sound, some are sensitive to light, some are sensitive to people. It is very different, and it's too many. It's too many. It's not just, you always had the kids that had, special classes in elementary school, but now it's like 1 in 4.
mm-hmm.
And girls are very hard to diagnose because they mask,
Girl,
you know? And if you don't know, you don't know.
yeah, let
What
me
are
tell
some
you
of the
what,
what are
that's a
some of the
soapbox I
signs?
could get on forever.
Exactly. What are some of the signs and symptoms that parents can, just kind of take a look at? Now, everybody's different brains. We know that. And we don't want you to overthink it and think that you can diagnose something that you need to go in and have a trained assessment. But there's some nuances and there's some patterns. And tell us a little bit about that, Erin.
Yeah, absolutely. And just before we hop on that, I did want to point out one thing. I'm going to talk about diagnosis a little bit, okay? As a parent or a person who is 18 or younger, I strongly recommend getting a diagnosis, getting that label, because it helps you to get services.
Mm-hmm.
Um, After the age of 18, what I'm going to say is that that label, that official stamp, isn't as important unless and until you want to get those accommodations and things like that and protections at work. Now, that being said, it's not important what the label is. And there's a whole ton of overlap and overlay of these things. And it's really about, like, um, what are the behaviors and how do you work with those behaviors? That's really my objective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's when you really start to take a look at, okay, what are we seeing? So a pretty typical response that people see in males is they'll see hyperactivity and the lack of ability to focus. And they come off as harsh and telling truth without any softness to it,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. The issue is, for a lot of different reasons, cultural, systemic, all this other kind of stuff, is that typically females are brought up in a way of, like, no, you need to be nice, and no, you need to focus, and no, you, and it's not that we don't tell males to focus, because we
Right.
do, but there's more of this historical allowance for, well, boys. Have you
Yeah,
ever heard
they're
girls will
wrong.
be girls?
Yeah,
You
they're
don't hear that.
rambunctious. Yeah, they're rambunctious. He's just being a boy. He's aggressive. He's smelling his oats. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. All those. Yeah.
But you don't hear that allowance for females. Females are expected at a really young age to be more responsible, to take care of people who are injured, whether that's the family, whether that's, all of that other kind of stuff. And so that kind of pressure causes them to mask. And so what you'd be looking for in females, don't get me wrong, you can also see this in males who mask, is perfectionism and an inability, so like a real sensitivity to rejection or perceived rejection. Like someone, if you tell them, hey, you could do a little bit better with this, and they fall apart,
Mhm.
a lot of times it doesn't actually mean that they can't take feedback. What it means is they have an extreme rejection sensitivity, which is actually a part of the diagnostic criteria. So those are a lot of the things that, it's not just your typical, people think a lot of like Rain Man, right? That's our perfect example of someone with autism and things like that is they don't have good people skills. They act like they're a savant and they're brilliant, and they have a hyper focus.
Mhm.
Okay.
And
So
also too, they are looking for a certain outward characteristic, the way that they hold their body, maybe their facial structure, maybe they don't, their eyes are not following people, but you just don't know that there's brilliance trapped in there.
yes, and
And
that's the number one reason why when I give presentations or I talk to people, I make sure they know that I have autism, I have ADHD, and oh my goodness, I'm an introvert. And then people go, I'm like, okay, look, here's the deal. Anyone can learn a skill.
absolutely.
It doesn't mean that's my natural state. And it doesn't mean it hasn't cost me a ton to be able to put on this face and to be able to turn it on. And now that I know how to
Right,
turn it off when I
right.
need to.
Absolutely. So, how did you find yourself in this zone of genius and deciding that you wanted to make this your career as being an educator for this population?
Man, let me tell you what, for the last probably 20 years, which the last 20 years I have been in education of some sort. It started off in juvenile rehabilitation, but even there, it was really about like, how do you get the person to be successful, right? To be successful with what they have. And that's ultimately where everything that has brought me through. So working with people in corrections, and then I moved over to teaching and working specifically with people who the K-12 system didn't work for them. And so they were trying to get their GED or they were trying to finish their high school credentials and stuff like that so that they can go on to the college level. And then also working at the college level. And then let's talk about people who already did graduate with a high school equivalency, their diploma and everything else like that. But somehow they don't have those critical thinking skills and those kinds of things in the college, and what the college measures as success. And it really got me just chewing and thinking on, well, what does success mean?
Right,
And if we're going to really take a look at like how you measure, right? How you measure success, we got to talk about, okay, then how do we help people achieve that
right,
success?
right,
And one of the issues is like, I started to see a tremendous amount that when people, first of all, don't feel safe and secure, Maslow's hierarchy, in their surroundings, so in their classroom or in whatever space that they're in their boardroom, in their office, that they are not able to focus on higher level thinking, higher level learning, higher level critical thinking, all of the other things, the output that we want that measures success.
mhm,
And so starting with that level of safety, and people think safety and they think, someone standing there with a knife or a gun threatening you. That is, yes, that is a level of safety. The hidden part is what people have in their background that they're bringing to the table. Now, that could um, be abuse that they sustained as a child. And it also could be that they literally do feel like the world is attacking them at every, juncture of their life. And that's where we get defense mode. A lot of times, really common thing is that teenagers, right? Oh my gosh, teenagers. Pretty much everybody can agree with
mhm.
teenagers are just so frustrating, right? And teenagers are a perfect example of Why are they being defensive? Why are they attacking when who's talking to them isn't meaning to attack them?
Right.
And if you take that at the simplest level of what's happening with a teenager is they don't feel safe in their autonomy and that they're not going to be punished or judged. So if you take those two things and then you apply them to anyone of any age,
Right.
if you don't feel that you have autonomy to do what's comfortable for you, what you feel you're good at, those kinds of things, there's no way you're going to be able to be successful. And so then I started taking a look at the content that we're presenting in classrooms and that we're presenting in the boardroom and that we're presenting in all of these different places. And it's a pretty common thing that you hear nowadays that the world was not created for people who are neurodivergent. And that's true. But what does that really mean? What that really means is that the vast majority of the time, people who are neurodivergent do feel threatened. And as a very true living experience, I was fired because they didn't know how to interact with me having boundaries and stuff like that and needing some uptime and some downtime. Um,
Well, because
where,
you were producing like a machine.
yeah,
And that's what I have found in my experience with people that are neurodivergent is that that's how they operate. Is once you get something that is engaging, that they enjoy, that they take it to the zenith point. It could
yep,
be. I was talking to this little young man, and I was talking to him. I just came from Europe, and we went to Loch Ness, and he could have given the presentation that they had given at Loch Ness. He was fascinated with dinosaurs, the history, all of them, and the myths and all that. But his mother cannot get him to do his math homework.
oh yeah,
You know, so it is. You have to learn as a parent, number one, to not make excuses and not be ashamed because his mother kept saying, "Okay, sit down. Okay, okay." That's not what he does.
no,
And if I'm in his space, that I need to be able to adapt to his environment. Why
yeah,
is it always that we have to acculturate or assimilate other people into what we do instead of merging and diverging and exploring what they're into?
yep,
That's the big panty. That's the big panty wear brains. Is that you have to be able to do that. Teachers, I get it. I get it. Now classrooms are 2025. You have no teacher's age. You don't have the supplies that you need. And it's test score after test score after test score is what determines your tenure and your salary.
yeah,
Of course, you don't want two or three children that are neurodivergent in there and you're trying to, work with the other 23. So people are quick to diagnose and misdiagnose,
yep. And I
or
gotta tell
locate.
you, you're talking about 3 or 4 people that are neurodivergent in the classes. It's actually much more likely that there are 13 to 14
Oh,
in
come
a
on now.
class size of 25 that have IEPs. So
Wow.
yeah,
And now they're looking to disband and disassemble the Department of Education, which funds a lot of these programs with subsidies to help these children
yep.
through there. And it's a challenge. So what are you finding as far as support and innovation uh, in your work as an educator? What is the positives there?
Yeah, heck yeah. One of the things that I'm a huge proponent of, and not only do I help parents and adults, I also really help educators and administrators about how do we create a system that helps support educators to have a more successful, not only for the kids, but for themselves,
Mhm.
environment. And that's the number one thing that I love to talk to everybody about at every age level and every education level is universal design. So, universal design, if you start from the very beginning of your content creation and creating, and it does not matter if you are talking about a corporation, a small business, a K-12 classroom, or a master's class, doesn't matter. Universal design uses the best practices for any and all people, which includes people who may have visibility disabilities, who may have hearing impairment, who may have slow auditory processing, all of those things. And that's what universal design does. And if you start at the very beginning, first of all, you are way less likely to have to crack the egg open and okay, now we have to make accommodations, because universal design from the very beginning starts with the very common accommodations that would be asked for people. So universal design from the beginning saves you time, saves you effort, everything else like that. And here's the other part of it. 60% of people who have disabilities do not disclose.
Right.
60%. And
Now,
that
wait.
could be because they don't know. It could be because they're worried about getting discriminated against or things like that, treated differently, right? It could be a number of things, but 60% of the people in your classroom have disabilities and in your office have disabilities and are not disclosing them. So the other part that universal design really handles is people who don't want to out themselves, because we don't want to have to force people out about things. How about we just make things as good as possible for everyone
Mhm.
from the beginning,
Right.
and then we can make individual tweaks as necessary.
Well, I mean, and that's a huge undertaking and it's a big ask
It is.
because now, again, they're disbanding DEI.
Yep.
People think diversity, equity, and inclusion is just a color line. No, baby, it's not just a color
Nope.
line. It's sexual orientation, it's your ethnicity. It might be the language that you speak or don't speak. It's a whole host of things that are going on. Women's right to choose, equality, equal pay in the work environment, all of
Yep.
these things. And then you add on another layer of cheese when you come to neurodivergent. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, this person can't focus, so I can't give them a task. They might be your greatest taskmaster because they are more ingrained and more detailed,
Exactly.
but giving them an opportunity. So, brains, don't overthink it, don't underlook it, don't overserve it because you're doing yourself a disservice. So, I want to ask you a couple quick questions about you. Just
Okay.
you. Okay, good. If you were an appliance in the kitchen, Erin, what appliance would you be?
Oh my God. That is so similar to my favorite question, which is if you, so I'm going to ask you this while I'm thinking of an answer for yours.
Okay.
If you were a study skill, what would you be and why?
A study skill. I'd probably be auditory. I'd be something that you could really absorb audibly.
Okay.
That's my communication love language.
Okay, I love that. I am gonna be I'm forgetting the name. The mixer that has tons of attachments and basically can do anything and everything. It's just gotta have the right attachment.
Is it a ninja or is it a
Not the
vital
ninja.
mix?
What is it?
A vital
Alice?
mix?
No, 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 no. So it's the mixer. Craft mat. No. Um,
KitchenAid.
KitchenAid. Thank you. I'm a KitchenAid.
You're a kid. That's my daughter. Let me tell you, we bought her one for her holiday, and you would have thought she won the lottery. And every birthday or holiday, she wants an attachment. So I get it. But
Well, and
you're
let me tell you
versatile.
something that a boss of mine, a previous boss of mine, has said is like, if Erin doesn't know how to do something, just give her 24 hours and then she'll know how to do it. So that's, I'm that adaptable.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. If you could time travel, go back to the past, stay here in the present, project to the future, where would you land?
Do I have to stay there?
No, we'll give you flexibility.
Okay. Then yeah, I'd like to go back to the first Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, not first Queen of England, first Queen Elizabeth.
Mhm.
Um, and uh, yeah, talk to her and take a look at several of the things that she did, because depending upon whose history you read, the choices that she made and had to make because she was a woman in that time,
Absolutely.
very, very different. And so, yeah, I'd love to have
I
a
just
conversation with her.
Yeah, I just came from Europe and went on an amazing, amazing tour. And they talked about, Elizabeth. Actually, I got to meet the previous queen that just passed away, her daughter, Princess Anne.
Okay.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting as well. But she did have to make some tough choices, especially when it came to the war and it came to, Scotland and dealing with Ireland. She made some heavy duty choices. And the sad part about it is that in this country, in the United States of America, we are not bold enough. We don't have enough courage. We don't have enough chutzpah to put a woman in charge.
Oh
I'm
man.
just saying. I'm just saying.
Oh
Women have,
man.
I mean, Cleopatra, look at how many women have run, you know, monarchies and everything and been successful.
And Queen Elizabeth the First is referred to as the Golden Age.
Yes. But they don't get it. If you were an animal, what animal would you be and why?
Hmm. Okay. When I was younger, I would have said tiger,
Mm-hmm.
ferocious, and now in my older wizened age, my spirit animal is a sloth.
Really?
Yes, and not from the perspective of like it's lazy, because here's the thing, sloths are not lazy. They just move very slowly and very intentionally.
Mm-hmm. I get it. I get it. I'd be an
And
elephant
oh, tell me why.
because they're big, they're powerful, they're massive, but they're also very community um, invested. They're great parents. They
Yeah, they're
never
family
forget.
oriented.
Yeah, they never forget, and and they're vegetarians. I think that that is the coolest thing. You have this big, massive animal. We were in Thailand, and I got to feed them and wash them, and just be up close. There's a conversation that happened between the eyes. That's my spirit animal, is an elephant. It was amazing. It was amazing, and people don't connect to those things. Um, if you could have a conversation with a 25-year-old Erin Baker, what would you say to her?
Ooh,
Ciao.
yeah. Stop cutting off your nose to spite your face. That's really what it is the thing that I would really talk to myself about is slow it down and focus on how to be effective. And I know you get frustrated and I know you want things to change. And in order to be effective, you have to play the long game.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great conversation. That's a great bone of contention, being whatever age you are at this time. A constant reminder that we need to slow it down. Brains, we're always running on amp. I tell everybody every day that it's a part of the distraction. I'm not going to be the hamster on the wheel. There's a lot going on in the world right now, but it is to keep me distracted from my primary focus,
Mm-hmm.
and that is to have the highest and greatest good. Ask the universe what else is possible and how can it get any better than this?
Yeah.
Be a kind person, show gratitude, respect, open myself up to people of different, mental capacities, physical, spiritual, financial. Just be an open conduit and a vessel for people to flow through. That's why I
Heck
do what I do.
yeah.
That's why I do what I do. So tell my brains a little bit about your program, what your current offering is, and how they can get in contact with you, Erin.
Heck yeah. So first of all, um, Erin Baker and Aaron.Baker.education@gmail.com.
All right.
Now, what I offer is I help parents If they're curious about what's going on at home, maybe they don't have a diagnosis or anything else like that, but they're trying to help their child be more excuse me, be more successful. And what I was gonna say is that it doesn't just have to be with autism and ADHD. Currently, I'm helping a family whose child is dyslexic and is having difficulties with reading. So anything in the if you're struggling at all with your child being successful and you want to help them be more successful, talk to me. Teachers, educators, institutions, districts, if you want to figure out how to make these processes more cost effective that actually support your educators in getting the outcomes that you want, come talk to me. Whether that's neurodiversity, whether that is universal design, and all of that other kind of stuff.
Now, is
Business.
universal,
Oh, go ahead.
I want to interject real quick. Is universal design your intellectual property, or is this a core program that's offered nationwide?
So, universal design is a concept, is a theory that's been around for at least 20 years. Yeah.
Okay. Because I want to give people that are not in your immediate area an opportunity to explore that and look into it as well.
Heck yeah. And I also, that's a great plug, is that I work nationally. I've not quite taken the step to work internationally yet, but I do Zooms, I do phone calls, I do traveling and stuff like that. So it is not just about being in my area. So please reach out.
Mhm.
And I'm really good at connecting people with resources with all of this kind of stuff as well. I have a whole trove of people that I connect with and to connect other people with across the country, across, the world actually. So, um,
This is definitely something that we need to look into and we need to explore because, for the lack of a better term, it is of epidemic proportion.
woo,
And people are, again, they're overlooking the underserved. And you don't realize what we are headed for. We've got artificial intelligence. We've got, our education system is not what it used to be. We are not the leaders in the world anymore. There are so many people with broken hearts. There are unfortunate situations with law enforcement because they don't understand and know how to deal with individuals that are having an emotional moment.
yep.
So what we want to do, brains, again, is dial back, take a breath. Damn it, just take a breath.
Let's take one together. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, just a deep inhale and a slow exhale. Exactly. I do that
Yep.
before I have a podcast with any of my guests. You know, I send them a virtual hug of love and allow us to be in the same space. It's about synchronicity, it's about energy, it's about space, it's about time, it's about love. And thank you so
Mm-hmm.
much for loving on us, Erin. Brain,
Oh,
I need you to love on me. I need you to go right here to this location. I need you to love, like, share, and subscribe to On the Edge with April Mahoney. You can find me all over the planet. I want you to reach out. First thing I want you to do is go in there and give your child a big hug and say, what is it that I can do for you? How can I serve you? Believe it or not, they'll tell you. Even if they're nonverbal, they'll tell you. They'll show you. I'm a firm believer that life can show you better than I can tell you all the
you just
time.
got to listen.
You just got to listen. And so listen to someone like Erin Baker who knows her stuff. She lives it. She's in that zone of genius and she's not going to steer you wrong. If she doesn't know, I'm sure that she has a million resources that can lead you in the right direction. Thank you so much for being on the show with me today, Erin. You are just the best.
Thank you so much for having me. I think you're the best.
Oh, we'll talk again soon.